Hello, my name is Lisa Kyriakides. I'm the director of the Handbell program at Aurora United Church. I play in our quintet EmBellished. I am a member of Bronze Foundation. I'm the Central Area Rep for OGEHR, and I'm the newly elected secretary for the Handbell Musicians of Canada, an organization I hope you will consider joining if you haven't already. I've been a conductor pretty much most of my life. I've conducted countless choirs, handbell ensembles, bands, orchestras, and I love to conduct. I also love to teach people to conduct. So today we're going to talk about the basics of conducting. So this tutorial is very short and I can't give you all the information, but I'm hoping that you'll look at this as a springboard for further education on conducting, or if you are an existing conductor, that maybe this will just remind you of a few things to help hone your skills. So first we're going to start with a PowerPoint presentation. And after that, we're going to flip to having you and I together practice your conducting. So I'm hoping you have enough room to stand up where you are for the second half of the tutorial. So right now I'm going to change to my PowerPoint presentation and we'll just talk about the basics of conducting. Just to note that my name is at the bottom of every slide and my email address. So feel free to contact me at any point if you have any further questions about this tutorial. So the first thing we need to talk about is why do we even have a conductor in the first place? So if you look at the slide, it says that the purpose of the conductor is to stress musical pulse so that all the performers can follow the same metrical rhythm. So in other words, we need to keep everyone together. And this is particularly important in bells because we often practice or perform in sort of straight lines with our tables. And I'm sure many of you have experienced this, that if you're a bass ringer, you can't see or hear the treble ringers and vice versa. You may only be able to hear the people directly around you, next to you. So you need a conductor that you can see and that can give you the information and keep the ensemble together. However, that's not the only reason why we have a conductor. So the bigger reason is that the conductor needs to be the messenger for the composer. So the conductor needs to understand the music and convey it through their gestures with their arms and their hands and their face. So a couple of things that they're going to convey is, one of them is phrasing. So is this legato, staccato, or marcato? How are we to perform this piece? In what style? Another thing the conductor conveys is the dynamics, softs, louds, crescendos, decrescendos. And the letter C, the conductor is interpreting the music. So is there a place where we want the treble ringers to play louder or the bass ringers to play louder? Maybe the bass ringers have the melody at this point. Do we want a certain section to play softer? So the conductor is interpreting the music and giving those cues to the ringers. Speaking of cues, also the conductor's job is to give specific cues. So perhaps there's a ringer that has to ring a specific bell on beat 3 of a measure, and the conductor can raise their left hand and cue that bell. And then very importantly, the conductor needs to listen. So the conductor needs to listen in rehearsal in order to help the ensemble work together and fix problems, adjust things, and again, interpret the music. And in performance, the conductor really is the ears of the ensemble and has to make split-second decisions as the performance is going on about things that maybe need to be tweaked or changed so that we have the best performance possible. So if you're the conductor, then you are the instrument itself. So let's talk about how you're going to stand and what your arms are going to do. So the first thing is your posture. So a conductor needs to stand generally with their feet shoulder width apart. Now, I say generally because you know your body best and you have to do what's best for it. But we use our shoulders as a guideline so that your feet aren't too far apart or they're not too close together. So use it as a guideline. And then I also suggest, we're going to just pretend these are my feet, that you put one foot slightly ahead of the other, just slightly. Right or left, you make that decision yourself, whatever's most comfortable for you. And what this does is it takes the pressure off the backs of your knees and also your lower back. Gives you a little bit more fluidity and flexibility as a conductor. Your body should be erect when you're standing, but not rigid. Again, we need to be fluid as conductors. Your head needs to be up, and your shoulders should be back and relaxed. So then your arms, which obviously are how you're going to conduct, using your arms. So when you raise your arm, your elbow should be slightly bent. Okay, it should be out, and your palm should be down, right? We don't want to conduct like this. So if you were to hold a baton, then that's how you would do it. You're holding it here. But for now, we're just going to conduct without batons. And then when you are not using your arm, particularly your left arm, you're going to be holding that down at your side. And then your wrists, there's a hinge point on your wrist, obviously, and you're going to use that to make lovely fluid gestures. And I want you to think of it as a little loose hinge point that you're going to use to have a slight bounce in your conducting. So what do we do with our hands? Most importantly. So obviously we have two hands, and your primary hand in conducting is your right hand. Your right hand's job is to keep the beat. So 1, 2, 3, 4. And your right hand is going to be moving the entire time you're conducting because its job is to keep the beat, keep everyone together, and so it's never going to stop moving. The right hand also shows dynamics. So if the piece is loud, then you have a large pattern, very large. You're indicating that we're going to be ringing very loudly. Or if it's soft, you're going to have a very small pattern. And this is going to indicate to your ringers that you want them to ring softly. Another thing, of course, is the interpretation of the music. So is this piece very marcato? So 1, 2, 3. So you're going to have a little bit more stiffer of a wrist and a little bit more jarring of a beat pattern. Or is it legato and smooth and beautiful? And so then you're going to have a much smoother pattern in your conducting. So while the right hand is going on for the entire piece, your left hand has a few jobs it can do, and they're very, very important jobs. So often you'll see conductors who are simply just mirroring their conducting with both hands, and there is a time to do that. But for the most part, you want to leave your left hand to do other jobs. One of its most important jobs is to cue. So while your right hand is conducting, you know that there's a cue, there's an entrance for your bass ringers, and you want to bring up the left hand and cue them while keeping the right hand in its job of keeping the beat. Another thing that the left hand can do is assisting in things. So if you're in a really dramatic part in your music and you want it to be loud and really get everybody to use those arms, then you can bring the left hand up and mirror the right hand and really make big, large movements. Also, your left hand can be used for changes. So if your right hand is conducting away, but we know that there's going to be a big dynamic change coming up, then we can lift our left hands up to indicate that something is about to happen and use that left hand to make the crescendo we want to make. And then another thing that the left hand can do is help with the balance. So as the right hand is conducting, the left hand can be giving cues of balance to the ensemble. So let's say your treble ringers aren't ringing loud enough. You can lift your left hand up and look at them and indicate to them that you want them to ring louder, or vice versa. You can look at them and indicate that you want them to be softer. All the while, your right hand continues with the beat. Okay. So let's talk about a few conducting terms we need, so that when we're practicing our conducting, we're all talking the same language. The first one is the downbeat. So, just as the word says, the downbeat is the first beat of every bar, and in every conducting pattern, that is a down movement. Down. That's your downbeat. And that's always the first beat of every measure. Next term is the upbeat. So the upbeat is the last beat of every measure, and it is an upswing, just as the name says, and it leads us to the downbeat. So 3-1 or 4-1. Doesn't matter what time signature you're in, it's always going to be an upswing to the downbeat. And then the next term is the prep beat, or its full name is the preparatory beat. This is how we're going to start our ensemble, and later on in this tutorial we're going to practice doing that specific job. So the preparatory beat, which is in professional organizations, usually only one beat, but it can be more. It's the beat that you're going to give your ringers that will show them a whole bunch of things. It's going to show them when they start ringing, how fast they need to be in the tempo, how loud we need to be, what the dynamic levels are, and the style in which they're going to play. Again, legato or staccato. I know with my groups, I'm trying to move them towards giving them just one preparatory beat, but they've wanted more. So we've kind of negotiated that I give them generally 2 preparatory beats before they begin to ring. Sometimes it depends on the piece. Sometimes I can give them only 1 and it works, but for the most part, they want 2. So we negotiate that together, and that's where they're comfortable, and they know that's going to happen. So for example, if something is in 3 beats and a measure, I will give them 2, 3, and then 1. So they know. And we discuss all this in advance, and they know that they're going to get 2 preparatory beats, so they'll know where the first beat is going to be. And the last term that I want to talk about is your gesture box. And what I mean by that is that you have to imagine that you have this box here, and it basically goes from your sternum to your forehead, and you want to try to keep your conducting pattern in this box. If your conducting pattern is too low, no one will see it, right? Again, remember, you're the person at the front of the group that needs to be seen by every single person. So you need to keep that conducting pattern high enough so people can see it. But the reason why we want to keep it here is because we also want to include our face in the message. So when we're conducting, we're going to use our face, our facial expressions, in order to indicate things to our ringers. So if our conducting is high enough, sort of around the sternum area and above, then our ringers will see our hands as well as our faces. So while just looking in one single gesture. So let's talk about some beat patterns. So there are lots of beat patterns, but this is a short tutorial. So we're going to talk about a beat pattern that's in 2 beats in a measure, 3 beats in a measure, and 4 beats in a measure. And we're going to practice those later on in this tutorial. So remember that the first beat is always the downbeat. So in a 2-beat measure, it's just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, and if it's 3 beats in a measure, it's 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. So it's just down, out, and up, down, out, and up. And if it's 4 beats in a measure, we have to add one more movement because we have one more beat. So it's going to be down, left, right, and up. Down, left, right, and up. So don't worry if you don't have these down pat right now, because we're going to practice them later on in the tutorial. Which leads me to my last slide, which is about practicing. So once we get done with the PowerPoint, we're going to stand up and we're going to practice 3 things. 1, we're going to practice how we start our performance. How do we get our ringers to all start together? Then we're going to talk about what we do at the end of a performance. How do we get everybody to stop together? And then I have some recordings of pieces in 2 beats in a measure, 3 beats in a measure, and 4 beats in a measure. And we're going to review those beat patterns that we just looked at, and I'm going to have you conduct with me. So it's your turn to stand up now, and then we'll go into the conducting portion. Now that you're standing, let's review your posture. So remember that your feet were to be shoulder width apart or somewhere variants of that. Put one foot slightly forward so that you can release those knees, and make sure your body is nice and tall and that your shoulders are back and down. In this, you're going to mirror what I'm doing. So I need you to always use the correct hand when you're conducting. You're always going to use your right hand. But I'm going to use my left hand, so it looks like we're in a mirror. So I want you to do exactly what I'm doing. Our first topic we're going to work on is how do we start our ensemble. I want you to imagine that you have your ringers in front of you standing at their tables and you're about to begin. The first thing you need to do is make sure you have everybody's attention so that you don't have one person who doesn't pick up their bell. So you look at all your ringers, make sure everybody's focused. And this is what I do. I pull my hands up That indicates to my ringers that they need to put their hands on their bells. Then I give another look, make sure no one's looking at an audience member or something. Again, I look around, make sure I've got everybody's attention. And then I have them bring up the bells and I indicate what style I want. So we bring up the bells and then we're ready to play. So in that instance, I brought them up slowly and smoothly because the piece would be slow and smooth. But let's say the piece was extremely rhythmic. So then I would, or fast, and I would bring them up like that and have them bring them up fast. There's nothing worse than having them bring the bells up slow and smooth and then all of a sudden play fast. It's very jarring. I want you to think that the music actually starts, or the performance starts, when your ringers have their hands on their bells and they're ready to bring them up. So let's practice that, okay? So you put your hands up so that they know you're ready. You look at them, make sure everybody's looking, and then let's bring the bells up. Okay? Now their bells are up. So let's pretend that we are going to conduct in a 3-beat pattern, and we're going to give them 2 preparatory beats. So we're going to go out and up, and then they play. Okay, so let's do that again. Ready? So we put our hands out. We look at all our ringers. Everybody's looking at us. We bring our bells up. And then we go 2, 3, 1. And that's how we start our ensemble. Next thing is, how do we stop our ensemble from playing? So if they have a mart or a mallet at the end, it's simple because that movement will stop the piece. But a lot of music just has a whole note or a half note at the end with a whole bunch of ringers ringing that. So again, let's stay in a 3-time signature. Okay? Let's beat 1 bar of 3, and then we'll do the final bar, which will be a dotted half note. And this is what I do. So let me show you. So this is the measure before, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and stop. That's how I indicate to my ringers that I want them to move the bells out in the last measure and back in to stop at the end. That's not the be-all and end-all. There's lots of different ways you can do it. You could go 1, 2, 3, stop. And they would just know that that's when they bring their bells back. Whatever way you develop yourself, as long as you have communicated that with your ringers, that's going to work for them. So as long as they understand what you want, you'll work it together with them. So let's practice that. So we're in a 3-beat measure, and then we'll have them stop their bells after a dotted half note. So here we go. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3, and stop. Okay, let's do it again. Ready? And 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3, and stop. That's how we're going to stop them. All right, so now let's review our beat patterns and do them to some music. So the first beat pattern we're going to look at is the simplest one, 2. So let's just review it. It's down, up, down, up, down, up, down, up. So the piece we're going to use is called Jubilant Fanfare by Kevin McChesney, and it's loud and fun and rhythmic and fast. So we'll start the music. I'll start conducting, and anytime you want to join me, you go ahead. So that was our 2-beat pattern. And you notice that the way I used my hands was very rhythmic, because this was a very rhythmic piece, almost in a marcato style. So that's the way I moved my arm and my hands. So then let's practice our 3-beat pattern. So our 2-beat pattern was just down and up. Our 3-beat pattern is down, out, and up. Down, out, and up. Down, out, and up, down. So do it with me. Out and up, down, out, and up, down, out, and up. Okay, so the piece we're going to use for this is called Infant, Holy Infant, Lowly by Fred Grayman. And this piece is soft, so we're going to use a smaller beat pattern. It is much slower and it's very legato. So we're going to change our beat pattern to indicate those things. So here we go. 3 beats in a measure. And that's 3. So now we're going to do our last time signature, which is 4 beats in a measure. So we have to add an extra beat in here. So it's down, left, right, and up. Down, left, right, and up. Down, so join me, left, right, and up. Down, left, right, and up. So the piece we're going to use for this is Come Christians Join to Sing by one of my favorite composers, Jason Krug. This is fast and loud and very rhythmic, so we're going to have a very active beat pattern. All right, so here we go, 4 beats in a measure. All right, so that's conducting the basics. I hope you've gotten a few tips for your conducting, and we can have a great discussion about this at the Q&A that follows this video. So I hope to see you there. Thank you.